Using ZBrush can be a bit confusing and daunting for users of other 3D packages. That's because ZBrush didn't start off as a 3D package, but as an illustration tool using 2.5D space. ZBrush doesn't use a traditional viewport like Maya or Max. It uses a canvas like Photoshop would. If you open ZBrush and don't open a Lightbox project right away, but instead go to the empty canvas, the first thing that you're going to see is that you make a brush stroke. Under the tools, there are a lot of these 2.5D brushes or tools. Over on the left, we have the Photoshop toolbar. On the right, we have the tool menu selector. The two programs started off very similar. Both have brushes, eraser tools, blur, sharpen, and smudge tools, as well as a clone stamp, and dodge, burn, and sponge tools for saturation and desaturation. Where ZBrush differed originally from Photoshop was that instead of having a two-dimensional shape tool, ZBrush had three-dimensional meshes that could be dragged out onto the canvas to add depth to the surface. In addition, each of these tools didn't just work in 2D space. They worked in a 2.5D space using a modified version of a pixel called a pixel. A traditional pixel works with RGB and alpha or transparency information. ZBrush's pixel works with RGB, transparency, but it also works with depth information. So if pixels are like paint, then a pixel is more like relief sculpture with color. Both will work off of a flat surface, but a pixel can build outward from that flat canvas, whereas a pixel will only change the RGB and transparency values of it. Back to the ZBrush canvas here. This is the simple brush, one of the most basic brushes in the ZBrush 2.5D toolset. I'm not using any alphas or anything with this, so it's giving you kind of a hard, sort of a square dab to it. So here I'm laying down thin strips of clay to build up the surface. Now I'm coming in with the smudge tool to blend in some of the pixelated brush strokes to make it look a little bit more wavy, like bark on a tree. With the bump brush, I'm adding in some alpha texture, just creating some sort of wobbly, knobbly bark, giving it a more uneven and gnarly surface. And coming in with the eraser tool, again, just like Photoshop, refining the shapes. The Deco brush, not to be confused with the 3D Edit Deco brush, this brush allows you to stretch a texture image along a single brush stroke and build them up on top of each other. Now the snake hook brush, one of the more interesting 2.5D brushes, actually pulls out tendrils from your model outward from the canvas. This is great for getting things like branches, hair locks, things of that nature. And using the Deco brush to paint that texture back into the roots. Pulling out some branches using the snake hook. And all of these only appear as if they're three-dimensional models. Think of them more like 2.5D or relief sculpture. More snake hook here to get some more gestural roots in place. And then I create a new layer and use the fiber brush with some varying settings to get almost a mossy kind of foliage. Thinking of it as kind of a swamp tree. Now at any time in the process, you can come up to the light menu and change where the light is coming from. You can add lights and change their color. You can change the background color and gradient. And these settings can be modified over and over again as you go along to fine-tune the look that you're going for. But the real power in ZBrush was its ability to bring in primitives or models made in other software packages and to edit them using what feels more like traditional clay sculpting techniques rather than the more technical tools available in software packages like Maya or 3D Studio Max. This digital clay approach to modeling became the industry standard for people creating anything organic in a 3D environment. Over the years, ZBrush refined its digital clay abilities and branched out into several other aspects of the 3D modeling pipeline to create the software that it is today. No longer just a 2.5D illustration tool, but a full 3D package